We're back. Tasty Crypto Show. I'm Ryan Grace, and with me today, she needs absolutely no introduction whatsoever. Katie McGarrigle, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here, Ryan.
Yeah, me
it's
too.
It's just like old times.
It really is. We were just talking off air how we've both been here now for over a decade. Done a ton of content together here on the show. I think you are, in a way, the queen of Tasty Trade.
I think there's a couple other people that might be,
Maybe
a tier or two above me for that. But, I'm happy to take that crown if it becomes mine one day.
I think you deserve it. I'm excited to do a new mini-series with you here on the Tasty Crypto Show. We've been talking about this. Katie has been getting more and more involved with crypto on the business side, on the Tasty Crypto side, on the Tasty Trade side. And the idea came to mind that we would kick off, or I guess bring back, where do I start? Crypto.
Yes. So to kind of add to that, I learned how to trade options and futures options all right here in the Tasty Studios. Like you said, right when we kind of first started working here together over 10 years ago now. So I've got, some experience under my belt, but frankly, I've kind of avoided the crypto space mostly because, there's a lot that comes with the intimidation of learning a new product, right? So it's the language, which DeFi has its own set of language and terms that are even so different than the options and futures trading world. So that was kind of a deterrent to me. But on top of that, there's a time element involved. So
Absolutely.
It's really nice that you and I can actually carve out, the next couple of weeks, 30 minutes a day to just kind of see how I can start to integrate this into just my day-to-day portfolio.
Absolutely. I think it has a place in a portfolio. We're going to walk through all of that and more here on the show. But before we do that, Katie, we're live on YouTube. So if you're streaming on YouTube, hit us up in the chat. Type in some crazy stuff. Before we get started, we got Lone Sophos here. We got Dav. Well, we got Tasty Crypto up in here as well. So if you are on the show, you have a question, you want to type in a comment, hit us up. The chat is open. But Katie, let's jump into it. Where do I start? Crypto, episode 1. Beautiful
Mini tiny
thumbnail,
golf clap. Gentle.
I must say. So today, I want to talk about the basics. Before we do that, though, I want to get some understanding and maybe set the stage for everybody as to kind of how you'd rate or rank your crypto knowledge. I think you've bought Bitcoin before.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Tiny bit.
But how familiar with the space, the industry, the markets, the products, just anything at all? Where are you at?
I would say that, if you were putting me on a scale from 1 to 5, 5 being an expert and 1 being I know nothing, I'm at a 1.5.
Okay.
I have truly, I want to come into this with as little bias as possible, and I'm hoping to rely on the resources that you guys have already kind of built on tastycrypto.com, and as well as on the Tasty Trade website, as well as on Tasty Live. I want to kind of utilize those to help me get a little bit further along than I currently am. But for the most part, it's been very broad. I know some major coins. I know a teeny tiny bit about how it works. I understand that they can be vehicles for both investing as well as speculation. I know that I can probably stick to, the most liquid or the most heavily traded ones. I know that derivatives are hopefully on the way. But other than that, I have been very, very passive when it comes to learning more about the crypto space.
Perfect.
1.5.
That's a great place to start.
Do you think I can get to a 4 by the end of this?
I think in 4 episodes, maybe 3 episodes, we'll have you full degen.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We'll be on chain. You'll be in some memes.
Okay.
We'll be having fun. We hope to get there.
Yeah, I think we will. And I think, the good part about this is that, and I've talked about this, and you've probably talked about this as well, but I don't like the idea of trying to cram, right? When you're in college, you cram overnight for an exam and try to put as much into your head in a 24-hour period of time so that you can ace the test. But I see this much more as a long-term play that I need to kind of build a muscle memory on in order to do this successfully. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. What I hope to accomplish with this show is for everyone to walk away with some foundational knowledge, some understanding of what this is, what we mean when we say crypto, what it represents, how you can participate in the space, and maybe where it fits in your portfolio. A lot of educational series tend to jump right into the weeds and get into very specific details around how the technology works. Technology is an important component to this, but we're not going to really focus on that. We're going to focus more on the why, the what a little bit, less on the how, but really the why. Why is blockchain such a transformational technology? Why is Bitcoin so important? What does this represent? And again, how do you participate in a way where maybe you can make some money along the way? At the end of the day, that's our goal here as investors. If this is something that I'm going to allocate capital to, well, I hope to see a return. And so we'll talk about why we think that there's, a probability of return. There's a positive expected value here when participating in the market. And we'll get through all of that throughout the show.
I mean, and what better day to start than where we're seeing Bitcoin trading?
Right? Yeah.
It's kind of like the stars aligned for just this show.
We are kicking it off with Bitcoin at all-time highs, or right there near all-time highs. So let's jump into it, Katie. Where do I start crypto? Quick overview of what we're going to cover here on the series, little mini series. Not quite sure how many episodes, 4, 6, maybe more. We're going to run this until Thanksgiving here in the U.S. at the very least. But Monday and Wednesday this week, we will be covering Where Do I Start Crypto. Katie's on a journey. I'm her guide. And like I mentioned, we're going to try to give everyone a foundational understanding that they can use if they decide to invest in the crypto space. So a little bit of an intro. Going to try to define some of the jargon that we use. We're going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to talk about Ethereum. We're going to talk about investing in crypto as well. Hopefully provide some perspective around how to approach markets. Same thing that we do with futures and options. And then we are going to get into the details, into the weeds a little bit towards the end. We're going to talk about going on chain, participating in DeFi, some of the tools that you can use, whether that's the tastycrypto self-custody wallet or some of the features that exist at tastytrade. We're going to walk everyone through how to use the products, how to use the platforms, which will be exciting. So a little bit of a demo that'll be incorporated into the shows as well.
That'll be great because I feel like there is so much technology out there now. You kind of don't necessarily know what you're looking at as a newbie. So I like that we're, kind of starting not narrow, but, with products and tools that I already kind of use and know. And from there, if you decide to expand or want to, you can. But sounds great.
Yeah, hopefully it feels really familiar. Before we jump into the basics of crypto, I want to get a sense from you. When I say crypto, what do you think about? What is crypto to you?
I mean, it's a tough question because if you were to ask me, several years ago, I'd be like, it's like digital money, you know what I mean? But now, as I've gotten a little bit more farther along, and of course, you can exchange goods and services for it, but for me, at the end of the day, it's just like another vehicle in which I can participate and build my portfolio. So whether that is a store of value or a digital asset or a safe haven or a diversifying tool, it's kind of all of those things to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you're looking for a more formalized definition.
No, I'm just curious what comes to mind when you think about crypto. I want to approach it to start with from a very broad perspective. So I liked how you mentioned that it's all of these things. And when we talk about crypto on the show, the first takeaway I want everyone to have is that we're describing something much bigger, though related to Bitcoin. A lot of times people will use these terms synonymously, interchangeably, crypto, Bitcoin. I do that myself. But when we talk about crypto, we're really talking about or using this term as a catch-all to describe everything from blockchain technology, cryptocurrency, digital assets, NFTs, tokens, all of these terms, words, the jargon that people are probably used to hearing by now fits into this crypto bucket when we talk about crypto. We're also going to talk about blockchain. You're going to hear that quite a bit. You're going to hear the term network. When I say blockchain or I say network, for the most part, I'm talking about the same thing. And that's the blockchain network. There's more than one. Bitcoin is a blockchain network. We'll talk about that. But at the kind of most basic level, the way that I like to think about it is that the blockchain is just simply a way to transfer value. There's a lot that you need to know about it, but high level, it's a network for value transfer. You'll hear distributed digital ledger. We'll talk about what that means, but it's a digital ledger. Kind of think of it as a spreadsheet in the clouds. Decentralized, right?
Yeah.
Is maybe one way that you can think about this. And this database or this spreadsheet, this blockchain network, it stores data. It stores transaction history. And that might not seem like it's very valuable or there's anything special about that, but we'll explain why, depending on how it's used, why that matters. But you'll hear blockchain, you'll hear network, and that is the underlying computer network that tokens or value is transferred on.
Right.
You'll also hear cryptocurrency, and this is the mechanism for that value transfer. This is the token, so to speak. It's the digital money on the blockchain. And we can think about that as being useful for us to transfer back and forth, for us to make payments. But it's also a way for, in a sense, computers to pay one another. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter who's transferring the value or why the value is being transferred. But the token is used to represent value on the blockchain network, and the network is used to facilitate the transfer of the value.
Right.
That in itself is, in some people's opinion, very valuable, inherently very valuable. But that's what we're talking about when we say crypto, high level, catch-all term for everything that kind of fits into this space, blockchain or network, and then cryptocurrency. A couple terms I wanted to get out of the way to start with.
So, like, if you were to put it in more traditional finance terms, like, if I am using Venmo to transfer US dollars to you, like, do those feel similar enough to you?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it.
The network and the currency?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. Venmo, the network, and then in this case, the value transfer mechanism, US dollars on top of this network or within this network. I think that's a fair way to approach it.
I know it's a little more nuanced than that, but I'm just trying to bake it into something that's like simple enough.
Yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic way to simplify it. In this case, the cryptocurrency that we're going to talk about next is Bitcoin. The network is also called Bitcoin, so it can get a little bit confusing. But let's jump right into that and talk about it.
It wouldn't be the show if there wasn't a couple of gimmies and gotchas,
right?
You know?
Absolutely. Why is it called this again? That's just what they called it. So let's talk a bit more about the most famous cryptocurrency, the gateway drug, I suppose, where everyone tends to start, have an interest in crypto curious, something going on in this space, blockchain this, blockchain that, you end up at Bitcoin most of the time. At least that's where you start most of the time.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin is both a blockchain network, it's a technology, it's also a cryptocurrency. This is where it can get a little confusing. But let's start with big B and little b. So like I mentioned, Bitcoin is both a technology and a digital asset. When you see Bitcoin written with an uppercase B, not always, but most of the time, it's likely that it's referring to the blockchain network.
Okay.
So this is the network of computers, the Bitcoin code or the protocol rules, the overall ecosystem that exists and supports Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency. Very early on, I would say almost a decade ago, you would hear these things in financial media. You'd hear people that were learning about this, and they would say things like, really love blockchain technology, but I don't like the token. You know, and this is back before we really had any sense of global regulations or how to approach this. And so people would say, are these securities? Maybe, maybe not. But everybody would say, I really like blockchain, but I don't like the token. Well, you kind of need the token.
Yeah.
And so that's Bitcoin, little b.
Little b.
Lowercase b.
Yeah.
When you see that.
Improper noun or proper
Yes.
noun, big B, obviously.
Oh.
Okay. And then regular.
Yeah, I think very simply, big B, that's the blockchain network.
Yeah.
So that's Bitcoin, the network, the ecosystem, how all this works. And then there's Bitcoin, little b, that's the token.
Yeah.
That's the cryptocurrency. We'll get into the differences between tokens, technically, and cryptocurrency. There's some slight differences there. But Bitcoin, little b, that's Bitcoin that we're trading.
Yeah.
The crypto, Bitcoin, big B, is a technology.
So little b, I mean, we're going to be talking about both on the show, of course, but the thing that you and I are going to be buying and selling is little b.
Yes, but as a way to participate or invest in big B. And I think that's the key here.
Okay, I get that.
People also say things like, it's not real. There's no intrinsic value. I can't touch it. I can't see it. I can't hold it. At least with gold,
Yeah.
I can touch it. I can hold it, right? The value here is in the technology.
Right.
And you can invest or participate in this technology in dollars, in dollar terms, in terms of, I suppose, how it's valued, by owning Bitcoin. Now, you can use Bitcoin. You can just store Bitcoin, hold Bitcoin. But that's the way that you participate from a financial sense.
Okay, question there. When you say in dollars, is that globally?
No,
Or-
not necessarily.
Okay, so can you buy and sell Bitcoin in yen terms, in euro terms?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, you can. I think globally, though, quoted in dollars due to the fact that the dollar is the global reserve currency. When you look at many other commodities, and I consider Bitcoin, even though it's called a cryptocurrency, I consider Bitcoin a commodity. But most commodities are priced in dollars.
Right.
Not all of them, not for every transaction. But that's primarily the reason that it's priced in dollars, but absolutely local markets priced in the local currency.
Got it. Okay. I didn't know if there was like a standardization across the board.
No,
Which
not
would make sense
really.
if it's decentralized finance. There might not be standardizations quite yet, or there might be some, but not others. So.
Yeah, in terms of exchanges, it'll be localized in that sense. But in terms of how people talk about this or quote it, typically you're going to quote it in dollars versus quoting it in euros, for example.
Got it. Okay.
So Bitcoin, big B, little b, I wanted to call this out because it's really important to understand that what we're participating in here or we're investing in when we're buying Bitcoin is this technology. And there's a lot of inherent value in this technology that I think intrinsically makes it valuable. So let's talk about some of the, I guess, the features, right? What are the characteristics of Bitcoin that even make it interesting to begin with? Why does this thing matter? To your point, we have Venmo, we have PayPal. In the US, we have fantastic systems that arguably are, much more efficient at times than, let's say, the Bitcoin network. But here's why Bitcoin's so special. And we're going to dig into each one of these in just a second. I think the most important element here in terms of why, from an investment perspective, this is special is that it's a hard asset. There's a degree of rarity or scarcity. There's a limited supply of Bitcoin. 21 million will only ever be mined, will exist. On top of that, from the very early days, it's estimated that a couple million or so, maybe more, have been lost or are unrecoverable. People didn't
see the
store
horror
them
stories
properly.
on Reddit?
Exactly. So you
Okay.
know what I'm talking about. So there's about 19 million or so in circulation today. 21 million will only ever exist, but it's likely that there's some that are unrecoverable. So we're kind of pushing up against that upper bound. What makes this important is just that there's, again, a limited amount of it. So while it is digital, it has these components of a hard asset or hard money. Hence, it's
Commodity.
exactly. There's the digital gold analogy at times. So limited supply. It's also decentralized. This is really important in that there's no single entity that controls this. There's no single corporation, individual, government. It's a decentralized global computer network, all running the same code, all adhering to the same protocol rules and operating in similar form or fashion. No one can turn it off. No one can say to you, Katie McGarrigle, you can't participate in this. It's permissionless. It's peer-to-peer. It's decentralized. There are good things and bad things associated with centralization. There's good things and bad things associated with decentralization. But an important characteristic of, again, what makes Bitcoin special is that it's entirely decentralized.
Right. Okay.
It's also entirely digitally native. It exists only on the internet,
Right.
which gives it some unique properties. I also would argue that it probably introduces some unique risks, but it is only on the internet.
Right.
It's only online. And in a world where our lives are more and more digital, we spend more and more of our time there, more and more services and things that we interact with are digital. This, I think, does play as a currency, a store of value, or even collateral in a system. In that digital world, it plays more of a role going forward. But entirely digital. It's also extremely secure. So one thing I want to kind of clear up here is that you see people talk about Bitcoin as if it's extremely risky. You see, there was this hack or that hack, people lost money. Bitcoin has never been hacked. The blockchain network, the technology that we're talking about, has never been exposed. Exchanges can get hacked, people can get hacked, but this, in terms of the technology, the network itself, extremely secure because it's a decentralized blockchain technology. Inherently, that makes it secure. Given, and we won't get into all these details, like I said, but given how more Bitcoin is mined, cryptographically, how transactions are verified, added to a blockchain, secured, all of this makes this very, very secure, very robust as well.
Like you said, which comes with unique, like you said, people get locked out. They can never recover whatever it is they've lost. But that's also due to how secure the nature of the product is.
Yes. Yeah, it's not necessarily a positive or a negative. I mean, there's certainly positive characteristics and negative characteristics. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. It works this specific way. It's rules-based. It's mathematical. It's very kind of pure and true in that sense. And it's secure as a result. Does not necessarily mean that it's very easy to use, but it has a high degree of security, and that's important to a lot of people. It's also extremely transparent. It's still private, but all transactions, the history, the record of everything exists on chain. And I think, again, there's definitely positives and negatives to that. Very early on, for magic internet money, as people like to refer to it, there weren't that many use cases. One of the use cases was buying drugs, narcotics online, right, through kind of black market websites. Found a use case right away. Today, though, if you are a criminal or participating in criminal activity, I suppose, if you are trying to launder money, this blockchain is pretty transparent. Again, we don't exactly know who's associated with all these wallet addresses, but as many people have seen, usually the funds from these hacks, or at least historically, a lot of them have been recovered. A lot of times,
because you can just
there's
check
a trace.
the ledger.
Exactly. Anyone can look at the entire history of the Bitcoin network and its transactions, look at the blockchain. It's all perfectly transparent.
Yeah.
Which is a positive, I think, from a financial system perspective when you go back to, let's say, 2008, where you have all of these banks that are over-levered, that have all of these toxic assets. It's all commingled, intertwined within the banking system. And yet no one knows who owns or owes what where. Not very transparent. Very, very opaque system versus something that, at least in this case, very simple, digital, distributed ledger. Very transparent.
See, like, that's something I did not realize. Like, because like you said, people act as like this is like the dark web. And it's actually a lot more open than that. And I mean, you know, taking words right out of your slide, but transparent. Like, it seemed like it was just like this shady subsystem.
Look, at one point, there weren't a lot of use cases for this. Right? And that was over a decade ago. I would equate this to a system where, let's say you go to the grocery store. And I don't know what you buy at the grocery store. Some groceries, I suppose. And you get some change. Maybe you're one of the few people that pays with physical money.
Yeah. Back in my bartending days, maybe.
Okay.
But not so much anymore.
Well, you pay and you get your change. And we could, let's say in this system, we could track every single move that change you received has ever made.
Yep.
Maybe at one point, years ago, one of those dollars or 50 cents, whatever it was involved with some sort of illicit transaction. We can see that in theory. I mean, that's how transparent this is. Now, we might not know what those activities are or what that facilitated, but a record of the transactions, a history, exists on chain. So over time, as databases are built up against this, and there's a larger record of transactions, it becomes even more transparent, and I think less likely that you would use something like this for nefarious activities. The US dollar, physical fiat currency, is pretty good for that versus Bitcoin. But early on, all it was really used for. I am glad it found a use case, though, because it was able to survive and thrive, and here we are today, even though maybe one of the only use cases was the Silk Road at that time. But that said, these are a few of the reasons, high level, why Bitcoin is special. I think it's important to understand this. This feature set really is how I'll describe it, because it makes it a lot easier then to kind of grasp the intrinsic value, why this technology matters. It doesn't mean that you have to use this technology or that you should invest in Bitcoin. But because this exists, it unlocks opportunity for people around the world. It creates an alternative system. In many cases, it creates a very compelling alternative investment. We're going to talk through that here more on the show. We are going to run out of time, by the way. So we'll spend the beginning of the next episode talking a little bit more about scarcity, decentralization, kind of the digital portability that exists here, all of the features that, again, make this pretty compelling. And then we'll talk about, additionally, what that feature set lends itself to. Financial freedom, a bank for the unbanked. You remove financial intermediaries, you remove some costs, you gain efficiencies, you remove some friction there. And we'll, again, hit on what I think is to me as an investor, one of the most important pieces here, which is that scarcity, especially in a world where we see arguably continued devaluation of fiat currencies. Like, this stands out. There's definitely a reason why you'd want to invest in that as a result, I think. But we'll talk about all of that here on the series as we move forward.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I mean, like, even just, laying out the financial freedom and the middleman, like, all of that sounds great. And at the end of the day, even before that step, I'm like, this is just another tool in my toolbox that I can start to utilize and pivot towards if traditional markets are low in volatility, or I'm not having success with my traditional strategies or with my traditional asset classes that I'm trading. So all about, not only incorporating this as a way that I can stay active if certain approaches aren't necessarily working for me, but then all of the other compelling reasons to kind of to dig into this a little bit more. So
yeah, absolutely.
Excited.
And I promise I will not just talk at you the entire show either. I want to get your questions. I also want to hear questions from everybody that's following along here. So if you have a question for us, you can type it in the chat during the show, or you can send it to support@tastycrypto.com, and we'll surface it on the show, because I really want to understand your perspective and hopefully answer any questions that you do have that come up along the way. And we'll jump into the fun stuff, the more important stuff. Decentralization is great, but what drives crypto prices? How do I think about this as an investor? Is this something where I need to identify trends? What market environment does this work in? Maybe what market environment does it not work so well in? We're going to cover all of that, so I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And I am happy to be a mouthpiece for everybody's questions. So I will definitely come with my own, because I am naturally, I've had a journalism background. So I am a question asker by nature, but like you said, if there's anybody online that wants to ask questions too, I will relay them. It'll be great.
Beautiful. Well, that sets the stage for the show. We will be back on Wednesday. We're going to continue the conversation on Bitcoin, the basics, and then we're going to start talking about investing in crypto markets 101. But until then, I'm Ryan.
I'm Katie.
Thanks for watching.
Peace.